Well, I just found out that everything I just recorded was not working. It's very disappointing. It's like when you play a video game and forget to save, and you end up playing like I don't know. I think I recorded for like 3 hours. That's all gone. So basically, I recorded for 3 hours and it's all gone. It's all for nothing. But I'm gonna try to just sum it up in a really short segment instead of like I uploaded chapters 13 to 15 and the sound was not working. And I'm so disappointed. So I'm going to try to wrap this up really Reader's Digest, like super Reader's Digest version, and just try to paraphrase in my own words. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be. I'm just going to take it that way. All right, so chapter 13 is called No One Knows the Day or Hour. Essentially, there's a lot of parables and scriptures that are referenced here. That's essentially what chapter 13 is. It goes into some interesting parallels or interesting perspective on Matthew 25, where it says, I was hungry, I was thirsty, and I was a stranger, and I was sick, and you visited me. And then it goes into a spiritual perspective as to how you could possibly understand it, that you could fulfill it spiritually and not just physically. So I won't go into that, but I did in the other video, but I won't go into that. It's just, I don't think it's relevant to this topic of this book. All right. Moving on. All right, so there's a lot of information to digest in chapter 13, and that's one more reason to buy the book. Are you still in the dark with respect to these riddles or parables? If so, it's because you're not obeying the commandments in their entirety that you do not yet understand. We will walk you through this step by step to help you understand what has yet to be properly understood. And if you are not keeping the commandments, you still won't understand. But if you do, you might be able to get some inkling, or maybe more than an inkling. So that's chapter 13. Chapter 14 is titled, Can You Know the Day or the Hour? Can you? He says here how a lot of Christians do not keep God's holy days, although there are Messianic Jews and Hebraic roots, people who who supposedly understand the holy days more than most do, except that they observe them at the wrong times because they base their holy days off the Hillel 2 calendar. So this book says those are the wrong times. The right times are based on the sighted moon, based on this book. I'm not saying that as a dogmatic thing. I'm just reading what it says in the book. Although personally, I do observe the sighted moon calendar. So it says here, God's holy days, his Moedim, as outlined in Leviticus chapter 23, explain his plan of salvation. When you keep the holy days, the Moedim, it helps you understand the proper biblical timing of everything. And there's one part he really stresses, I'm going to read that. It is only by keeping his commandments that we start to read backwards. That we learn his plan of salvation and the timing of all things. So the fourth commandment is keeping the Sabbath holy. Christianity says that's done away with. But Yeshua said, if you love me, you would keep my commandments, not do away with the law. He did not say, in order to love me, do away with the Torah, call on my name and pray the sinner's prayer. I don't know what that means, but the sinner's prayer, I'm not sure what that meant. This is the love of Yah if we keep his commandments. By this we know that we love the children of Elohim whenever we love Elohim and keep his commandments. For this is the love of Elohim, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. So the Sabbath is our first teaching when it comes to biblically based timekeeping. Falls on the seventh day on every Saturday, more specifically sunset Friday evening, and goes to sunset Saturday evening. It also represents the seventh millennium, which is spoken about in Hebrews chapter 4. You can read that yourselves in your own time, verses 1 to 12. Okay. So when you don't keep the holy days, the sabbatical years, the Jubilee cycles, the Sabbath, which is part of the holy days, you can no longer see the timing of Yah's appointed days or even his plan of salvation due to the fact that you believe the law is done away with, or Christians believe that, or most Christians, or they believe they're only for the Jews, and therefore they have the conviction no one is required to keep them. That is precisely why they cannot understand prophecy in its proper perspective. Okay. There's an interesting thing he says here is that it's altogether good to preach against sin, to say, a lot of preachers say that don't commit adultery. They quote the seventh commandment, you shall not commit adultery. And then they say, don't worship idols, the second commandment. Don't make a graven image, you shall not bow down, and so on. But when it comes to the fourth commandment, to keep the Sabbath, then they just throw out the book and say, I'm not under law, I'm under grace. I can disobey God's commandments. Isn't that a strange way to reason that? You obey the law, but you disobey the Sabbath law. It says here in James 2:10. I'm going to read James 2:10 just to get that point across. I hope this works this time. I don't have to record for the third time. James 2:10. It's hard to find in this Bible. I'm just going to look in the table of contents because the order of the books are not how I'm used to it. I grew up on the King James order. James is in this Bible, the letter to James, from James, letters attributed to St. James. It's before Thessalonians, after the book of Acts. This is chronological. So James chapter 2, verse 10 reads, For a man who has laid the law as a whole to heart, but has failed in one particular, is liable for breaking all its provisions. Wow. So even if you keep most of the Torah and you break one point, you're guilty of all of them. It sounds harsh, but at the same time, love doesn't break the Torah if you're really in the spirit of love. If you walk in the spirit, you will not break the Torah. Okay, so that's chapter 14. So we're just zooming through. Try to get this done in less than half an hour. Chapter 15, titled The Seventh Day Sabbath and the Seventh Millennium. So this chapter pretty much walks us through the holy days outlined in the book of Leviticus. Starting with the Sabbath is Leviticus 23. The Sabbath is the very first Moedim or holy day. Like I said earlier, it's sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. We're not to work, not to have anyone to work for us, and we're not to seek our own pleasure. So that means don't go out to eat at a restaurant during the Sabbath. I know a lot of people do that, and that's clearly breaking the Sabbath. Can't excuse that, making people work for us. Prepare your own food in advance. Still not sure about cooking on the Sabbath, because are we allowed to make a sandwich on the Sabbath? How far do we go with that? That's another video for another time. The weekly Sabbath is an act of sevening ourselves each week. Basically, sevening ourselves means to make a pledge to Yah, to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, to Yah, by keeping it holy and learning more about Him in study, communicating in prayer, resting, spending quality time with your family. The Hebrew word for 7, the number 7, is Sheba, which comes from the word Shaba, like I said, which means to seven oneself by swearing an oath or by repeating a declaration 7 times. The bride circles her husband 7 times in the wedding day. Israel marched around Jericho 7 times. Abram set aside 7 ewe lambs, and we also seven ourselves when we keep the 7th day, Shabbat, when we keep the 7 feasts in Leviticus 23, there are 7 of them. When we seven ourselves when we keep the holy days of the 7th month. We seven ourselves when we keep the 7th year Shemitah land rest. We seven ourselves when we keep the 7 Shabbats, Shemitah Shabbats leading up to the 50th day of Pentecost. We seven ourselves when we keep the 7 sabbatical years. Oh, sorry, I confused that. 7 Sabbaths, weekly Shabbats, leading up to Shavuot, and then we seven ourselves. The weekly Shabbat foreshadows the 7th millennium of rest. Okay. So, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, also known as Chag HaMatzot. So, the important clue for us to understand is each feast day and holy day falls on a certain time of the year during a certain season. Everything Yah does, that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh does, is done at appointed times and seasons during His Moedim. It is always on each of these holy days that Yah has done or is going to do something significant. So, in terms of Pesach, Passover, that's when the death angel passed over the Israelites while they were enslaved in Egypt. That was the end of the 14th day. The night of the 15th, the death angel passed over and killed the firstborn of the Egyptians. None of the Israelites who had blood, but did not kill any of the Israelites who had blood on their doors. As well, the 15th day, the first holy day of the 7 days or Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Israelites crossed the Red Sea at Nuweiba on the 7th day of Unleavened Bread. Each of these great events that Yah orchestrated took place on each of these holy days, and He set these aside for us as dress arrived on this planet, he was examined starting on the 10th day of the first month, very much in the same way lambs were examined and brought into homes. Before each lamb was killed on the 14th, roasted and eaten after sunset as the 15th got underway. Yeshua too was killed on the 14th, prior to the onset of the first high holy day of unleavened bread, and placed in the grave at the end of the same 14th day. The particular year he was killed, the 14th, fell on a Wednesday. He was put into the grave before sunset and the start of the first day of unleavened bread, which began Wednesday night. So you can do the count. 3 days, 3 nights. That was the sign he gave that he was Mashiach, the sign of the prophet Yonah. Wave Sheaf Day or Ascension Sunday. Yehoshua was resurrected on this day, on Wave Sheaf Sunday. As well as the other saints who came out of their graves when Yeshua was crucified. When there's a great earthquake, people came out of their graves, right? These saints ascended to heaven with him on that day, the Wave Sheaf Sunday. Although Yeshua said in John 3:13, no man has ascended to heaven except the Son of Man which came from heaven, that only applied up to that time that he said that. Up until that time, no one had ascended to heaven until he was crucified. He ascended to heaven, and then that no longer applied. That verse didn't apply anymore because this is after that event. So Yoshua is the wave offering, the first of the first fruits, waved at 9 a.m. on the first day of the week, during the 7 days of unleavened bread, which is Sunday of that week. He brought with him those saints who he had delivered from the grave the night before. So Christians do not understand this day, but instead they do Easter. And therein lies the confusion and the inability to understand when he is coming back and more things, but especially that Pentecost, Shavuot. When you count 50 days from the day you ascended to heaven, you get Pentecost Sunday. Two big things that happened during this time, Shavuot, Pentecost, is the giving of Torah at Mount Sinai and the giving of the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2. The imparting of the Holy Spirit. Do you see a pattern yet? Yah moves on each one of the holy days, and we are expected to be in the right place at the right time to learn what we need to witness, what we need to witness it, what we need to learn from it and be blessed or protected from other events. There's more to glean from the third holy day. So just like the first wave sheaf offering, there's a barley offering, right? That's a wave sheaf. There's another wave offering to be done at Pentecost. There are 2 loaves of bread, 11 loaves, and that represents the saints who had died previously. No, that's not what it represents. 2 loaves. 2 loaves. It will represent those who have died since AD 31 in the years leading up to his second coming. They will be raised up to meet him in the clouds on Pentecost. Do you see what you're missing out on? That you're missing out on by not keeping these holy days. These are the very heart, soul, and core of what Christians think they know, but they do not understand at all. Okay, I'm just going to change the angle. It's not the best angle. Okay. Do you see what you're missing out on? Okay, all these things are explained much more in depth in the books Remembering the Sabbatical Year of 2016 and the 2300 Days of Hell. This is referring to Daniel 70 Weeks Prophecy, not something else. But when you count the Jubilee years, you know when the 7th millennium rest is spoken of, when it happens, when it's to begin. Right, okay, moving on. So when you don't keep the holy days of Leviticus 23, and you try to understand prophecy or the New Testament or these sayings of Yehoshua, of Jesus, it's a problem. You don't have a foundation which to stand on or to build on. You become clueless, or you are clueless, and that you cannot understand those clues that we see in Leviticus 23. When you actually keep them, you can understand when they were fulfilled and what happened on those days and the significance of those days. They are foreshadowing, or shadow of pictures to come, and things that have already happened, actually. So there's an important point here for Jubilee cycles. When it comes to Jubilee cycles, the important point is a lot of people mistakenly count 50 as a Jubilee cycle. So when they Shana of mankind, they say it's 50 times 120 was 6,000. So a lot of people mistakenly, erroneously say we have 6,000 years on this planet. We're at year 577, whatever. They're just off by so much. Even if you believe it's 5,855, which it is, you would say that, well, there's still 145 years left. There's a lot of time. But when you count it the correct way, which is 49 years per Jubilee cycle, there's only 5,880, which means there's only 25 years. There's a big difference there. Big difference. Meaning he will come a lot earlier than you would expect. And those who say he's delaying and delaying don't realize he's right at the door, ready to kick it down. All right, I won't talk about that. You can read the book or buy it for yourself, or if you need a copy, please just message me or email me, however you want to contact me, or post a comment and get in touch that way. I have a PDF of this book. Okay, Feast of Trumpets. This is a mysterious day. Even the Jews don't know. They do not understand the true meaning of this feast day. And I said in the previous video that does not have audio. I said it just sends tingles down my spine. It's such a mysterious day. We do not know the purpose of this holy day. All we know is that this is the actual historically, biblically accurate day that Yeshua was born on. And there's 2 articles on the website sightedmoon.com titled Migdal Eder and the Birth of Messiah, and the other article, The Birthday of Yeshua, the Feast of Yom Teruah. You can learn more about how this is so. Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets, being the actual birthday of Yeshua, the first day of the 7th month, which usually is in the fall, and you would have shepherds being able to take their sheep out at that time But if it was in December, it would be too cold, even in that area. Okay, such a profound topic, talking about the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement is the day Satan is locked away. And there's a parallel with the ready man taking the live goat or the Azazel goat and placing all the sins of the people on that goat. And then it says here, he will let the goat go in the wilderness, if I'm not mistaken. I can't find it right here, but he will, where is it? He'll send him away into the wilderness. There it is. The parallel with that is Revelation 20, verses 1 to 3. An angel came down from heaven. He will, with a great chain in his hand, and he will take the dragon, the old serpent, the devil, and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, cast him into the abyss, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should deceive the nations no more, until the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little time. Why is Christianity not keeping this very important holy day and teaching about it as they should, as the day Satan is to be locked away? That's a very big event in our history that is yet to come, not fulfilled yet. Yeshua came to earth, he was crucified, and he rose again. That's a huge event in our history. This is going to be another huge event where Satan is locked away, but going to be released again after 1,000 years. The Feast of Sukkot is the 6th feast of the 7 annual holy days. It is a 7-day-long feast that represents the wedding that we as Christians are striving to be a part of. It is the marriage of the Messiah to his bride. And then the 8th day feast, known as Shemini Atzeret. It is also known as the Great White. It is known to Christians as the Great White Throne Judgment. So each of the 4 fall holy days represent events that are to take place in the future. That's all you need to know about that. It's so important to keep each holy day so you can understand, or so you can learn about future events and understand what God's plan is, what Yah's plan is in the future. He isn't keeping everyone in the dark, but if you obey him, you observe and guard his holy days, his Sabbath days, his holy feasts, his Moedim, his appointments, then you will be able to understand. You'll start to understand, and you will eventually be able to understand what he is going to do. We have only spoken very briefly about much more to be said on that. This book is about the day and the hour no man knows. We're about to show you which holy day this Hebrew idiom is in reference to, which leads me to chapter 16. I'm just going to go through it. This is a really, really important chapter. It's the key to understanding this book and the key to understanding when Jesus Christ, Yehoshua HaMashiach, is to return. So I don't want to read this book verbatim, word for word. So I'm going to try to give you an understanding of it. I'm going to try to paraphrase it as much as possible, but still stick to what it's saying. So the holy day that is being referred to as the day and hour no man knows is, in fact, the Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah, or the Feast of Shouting. Once again, the Jews don't understand why they keep it. The reason why no one can know the precise day or hour has to do with the Feast of Yom Teruah, how it's determined. Uh, if you don't keep the holy days, you won't know what I'm talking about. So it's going to be like Chinese to you. But if you do, this will make some sense. So the Feast of Trumpets, it falls on the first day of the 7th month. It is the only holy day, the only Moedim, the only appointed time that falls on a new moon. No other holy day does this. In order to determine the new moon, you can't use the Hillel 2 calendar because the Hillel 2 calendar is it's a guideline. It isn't foolproof. It tells you a general vicinity of when the new moon would occur, and it's based on the conjunction moon, which is the darkness of the moon. However, if you do observe the sighted moon, the new crescent moon, or even if you're Muslim and you look for the Hilal crescent, Hilal, that's how you determine the new month. It will tend to fall on the 29th or the 30th day of the month because a month cannot be longer than 30 days. And it can't be any less than, I believe, 28. But therefore, the new moon, hold on, let me just read this paragraph. I'm just getting stuck because it's been up for a long time. You cannot know for certain if you will sight the moon on the 29th or the 30th day of the month. If you're looking for the new crescent moon at the end of the 29th day, and you cannot sight it before it sets, then the month is declared to be a 30-day month. The new month begins the next evening after sunset. The Feast of Trumpets begins on the first day of the 7th month. Therefore, you do not know which day this feast will be on, nor do you know the hour, due to the fact that you do not know if the moon will first be seen just after sunset, or later in the evening, or not at all until the next evening. So it's a Feast of Trumpets that reveals to us when the Messiah is to come in the future, as it makes known to us the day he came in the past. I will set forth to prove this to you in the pages that follow. Okay, so 3 pages left, and then I can end this video. I don't want to rush through it because this is such an important piece of information, so vital to understand this. So because most people on this planet, I'm going to include that, most people on this planet do not keep this holy day the way it's supposed to be kept based on the sighted moon, crescent moon. They do not understand this message from Yeshua. He was using a Hebrewism. He concealed this message within Hebrewism. In other words, he was presenting us with a common phrase for its time, a common phrase that foreshadowed a future particular day, that only in those days everyone understood the meaning of this Hebrewism. No man can know the day or the hour is a Hebrew idiom for the Feast of Trumpets. Boom. To give examples of other idioms used by other groups of people and how they may not be understood outside that culture, let's use Australia. It's gone walkabout, which means it's lost and can't be found. Another Australian idiom is kangaroos loose in the top paddock, which means intellectually inadequate. Some of you might know bats in the belfry, which means a crazy person, or the expression kicking the bucket, which means to die. Here's one from North America, a wet sock, limp handshake. So what is he telling us? Yeshua is telling you by way of the well-known Hebrew idiom, no man can know the day or the hour. He's telling you that he will come, he will return on the Feast of Trumpets, a feast that comes at a day and an hour no man can know, on the first day of the 7th month, but no one is watching for him at this time because they fail to understand that he was describing a second coming. And we're commanded to watch. Watch what? Watch what? We have to make sure we guard the Shabbat, guard the Moedim. If we watch and guard and remember to keep the Moedim of Yah, as outlined in Leviticus 23, where we will be able to understand this important revelation. We've been told to watch out as well for the thief in the night. Who is this thief exactly? The thief is Yehoshua, because we are told in the book of Revelation, be watchful. If you will not watch, I will come upon you as a thief. You will not know what hour I will come upon you. Behold, I am coming as a thief. Blessed is the one who watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. For you yourselves know accurately that the day of Yah comes like a thief in the night. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 2. 2 Peter 3, 9-10. The day of Yah will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a rushing noise. And I spoke about some things in the other video. They're kind of frightening. I don't want to repeat that, but basically the world's going to be set on fire. Yeah. So what do we do? I mean, this planet is becoming more and more unpredictable. World events they are definitely, I don't even have the word to describe it. It's just, people can feel it in the air. Especially those who are really attuned to not just the mainstream news, but the alternative news. When it comes to the coronavirus, when it comes to rumors of wars, when it comes to this peace agreement we're going to hear about from President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu in about 4 hours and a bit. I'm going to say peace and security when sudden destruction will come. Earthquakes in various places and volcanic eruptions, just so much that is going on that people have got to wonder, when is Jesus coming back? Well, that's the answer for you. It's coming back in the Feast of Trumpets. I don't even know what's left in this book, because chapter 17 to 29, there's still a lot to go over. And I feel like it's going to be pretty interesting. We only know when now, and that's the Feast of Trumpets. That's when he's coming back. And so we can't know the day or hour. I mean, that still stands. That's still true, because if you've tried to sight the new moon, you will understand that it is not an easy task. It can happen within a 48-hour period. If it's not the 29th day, then it's on the 30th day. So technically, we cannot know the day. And we also cannot know the hour, but we can know the vicinity, the time frame, which is 48-hour period, So if we are looking forward to the new moon and we're watching for it ever so closely, you know what? That's a training that prepares us to watch for the return of Mashiach, of Yeshua, if we watch for the new moon. It's not merely looking for a new month, you're preparing to watch for a second coming. And we must be ready, and the way we can ready ourselves is by doing what Yeshua said, to go and sin no more, to follow him, to love our God, Elohim, Yahweh, to love Jehovah, to love our Father with all of our mind, all our strength, all our soul, as the Shema says. How do we love him? By keeping his commandments. That's how we know we love him. It's not just a feeling in your heart. It's when you have a relationship with him and you obey him. You do what he says. And second of all, is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, to esteem others better than ourselves, to fulfill the Torah by doing those two things, because those are the two greatest commandments. All the Torah hangs on those two. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you for watching. Shalom. Yah bless you. And help this make sense. If it didn't, then you have to obey. You have to obey Torah. There's a pretty big, in all seriousness, this is a big piece of information. It can be argued that one of the greatest, one of the biggest events of human history that has ever happened, besides us being created, was Yehoshua, was his arrival the first time as a baby, when he was born, and he was here for 30 to 40 years, thereabouts, 30-something years, and he was crucified, he died, and was buried in the tomb. He was placed in the tomb, I should say, not buried. And after 3 days and 3 nights, he wasn't found anymore, because he rose from the dead. That arguably has to be one of the greatest, biggest, world-changing events of our human existence as a species, as in all of our history. And the second biggest, maybe could be even bigger than the first one, probably will be, is the second coming. And for the longest time, people have predicted erroneously that he'd come 1972, 2012, and just threw out numbers, not basing it on scripture, but just basing it on their own ideas. Whereas this book is basing it on scripture itself. And the timeline, he hasn't said the year, but the timeline needs to match up with the biblical account as well. So I've gone on for almost an hour. I'm very tired because I did record this previously, but when I went to listen and double check, was the sound even on? There was no audio, and my jaw just dropped, and I just thought to myself, oh man, so I gotta record this tomorrow. But I said to myself, I'm just gonna do it now, because it's still fresh in my mind, and I could still go over this succinctly, and I won't have to read it verbatim, because I think in the previous videos I went kind of reading more than explaining or paraphrasing. It was less comprehension, more just parroting and just reading it. So I guess it worked out for the better. I mean, I don't want to make light of this. This is truth is 7 billion people on Earth. How many will actually be ready for this day? How many will be watching for this day? How many understand to watch at all? How many understand that this will be the day? Not another day. It won't be the Hallel 2 Feast of Trumpets. It will be the sighted moon Feast of Trumpets, which I would venture to say less than 100,000 people know about on this planet out of 7 billion. And I would venture to say even fewer, maybe 10,000, would be able to not only understand it, but are also watching for the sighted moon and observe the Moedim as outlined in Leviticus chapter 23. Such a big piece of information. And I watch a lot of YouTube videos. To be honest, one of my daily routines is before bed or even during the day. I'll make it a point to check my bookmarks. Yeah. My internet bookmarks, I'll go through those. It only takes a few minutes. Literally, I'd say less than an hour. And then the YouTube subscriptions, when I go through that could take me more than an hour easily, just because a lot of videos nowadays are quite lengthy. But I feel like there's not enough videos talking about this topic. And a lot of videos are just based on foolishness. So I don't mean everything's foolish, but what I've come to realize is that a lot of my subscriptions are leaning to a political slant. So it's talking about, conservatives versus Democrats, or those on the right versus those on the left. And ever since this coronavirus news has been breaking, and we can see just how we're starting to see just that it isn't like SARS. It's a lot worse. It could be 10 times as worse, or could be the next Black Plague, for all we know, which claimed 2/3 of the planet. 2/3 of the planet died. As much as half the planet died as a result of the Black Plague. And this could be as bad as that. Who knows? We really can't say. But thing is, in light of that news and these events unfolding, I realized how much of a waste of time it is to watch an hour of, the talking heads talking about President Trump and did he do this and impeachment this and Joe Biden this. And you know what? In the scheme of things, it's not important. It's not important to me. It doesn't affect my life. It doesn't affect my survival on this planet. The coronavirus does affect every single person on this planet's lives. No amount of money, no amount of power, prestige will you be able to exchange for your life. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, we can buy and protect ourselves by getting ready for it, buying food and supplies, protective equipment. At the same time, I feel like even bigger than the coronavirus is the return of return of essentially God to this planet, God the Son. It's gonna, I mean, before that happens, it's gonna be a really bad time, and already in that time, I would say a lot of people around the world are going through the tribulation, especially in China, especially in Syria, especially those Christians being beheaded. So anyway, just rambling on, I just want to say I'm going to go to chapter 17 next. It's entitled The Thief of the Feast of Trumpets. So we're going to uncover that in the next video. I was able to do 13 to 16 all in one shot. Didn't think that would happen. I think I previously said in I think I said in video of chapter 12 that it would be one video per chapter, but you know what, I was able to get through the chapters because I just realized that the book sets the foundation for what is going to be explained, and it's not until chapter 15, 16 area that we start to really see what this book's about. And now we're getting into the meat of this book. So thank you for watching. Shalom, and Yah bless you. Do expect chapter 17, the next video, to hit most likely before the end of the week, but just hit the bell notification and you'll get the notification.